Let's talk about what's happening in Afghanistan. With the withdrawal of the US troops from Afghanistan, it has brought its longest war to an end. Kabul has fallen to the Taliban, the Afghan president has fled, and the near surrender of Afghanistan is now complete. But who are the Taliban? How did they come back to power after 2.5 decades? Hello and welcome to Civic Sense. Well, before starting, I would like to share one thing that I had different plans regarding the content of the upcoming videos, but there's a humanitarian crisis going on in Afghanistan and I felt it is important to shed light on this issue. Videos on this issue will be coming up in 3 different parts in the coming days, as I felt it would be an injustice to cram all these things in one video and that you guys won't tolerate me for that continuous amount of time in one video. So without waiting further, let's begin. There's a great saying from Alexander the Great that goes like this: "May God keep you away from the venom of cobra, the teeth of tiger, and the revenge of an Afghan." Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires. The fall of Alexander's empire started from Bactria. The Britishers couldn't conquer it, and the same is true about the Soviet Union too. Presently, the US is also going through a legitimacy crisis in international politics, and one of the reasons for it is Afghanistan. The roots of this crisis lie in the 9 years war in Afghanistan that started in 1979. Now, before going into the details, first let us understand what kind of society Afghanistan is. It is a country where tribal warlords have huge influence over their respective regions. People have strong loyalties to their tribes, and with the terrain, most of it being mountainous and dry desert, it is extremely difficult to establish a nation state in Afghanistan. And hence, whichever central government comes into power, it lacks legitimacy. Let us rewind back to the late 1970s. The overthrow of the centrist government of President Muhammad Daud Khan by left-wing military officers led by Nur Muhammad Tariqi signifies that same urge of these tribal warlords. After his overthrow, the power went to the communists. It was shared by 2 Marxist-Leninist political groups, the People's Party and the Banner Party. This new communist government, with the support of the Soviet Union, launched an all-out political and socio-economic transformation program in the country. They started suppressing the political opposition, and they even began extensive land and social reforms along the communist line. This was bitterly resented by the people, especially the tribal warlords. They collectively rose against the government as mujahideen, people who engage in jihad. This uprising, along with the internal fighting in the government, forced the Soviets to invade Afghanistan. Their aim was to support this newly formed communist government. But the rebellion grew stronger, as these had the backing of the United States, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. The guerrilla war against the Soviets finally led to their withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1989, and the Mujahideen established their rule there. But again, as different tribal warlords had come together to form the government, there was internal fighting among them. A full-blown out civil war started. From this, the Taliban emerged and in 1996 captured power. They were funded mostly by Saudi Arabia and are an ultra-conservative political and religious faction. They implemented very strict interpretation of Islam. For example, during their reign from 1996 to 2001, they forced men to grow beards. Women were forced to wear burqas and schools were shut for girls. Women who went in public places alone without a male member, they were beaten. The Taliban held public executions in Kabul's Ghazi Stadium. The images of destruction of the Bamiyan Buddha statues are still fresh in our minds. Matters came to a head when Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization which had close ties with Taliban and was harbored by these Talibani people launched the September 11 terrorist attacks against the United States. The Taliban refused to hand over the man behind them, Osama bin Laden, and subsequently the US with its allies launched a series of military operations against the Taliban. And this drove them out, and a new government was established in Afghanistan with Hamid Karzai, again a tribal warlord, as its president. But this assault on the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda did not kill the movement. The Talibani people feel that they are fighting an international occupation and the illegitimate government in Afghanistan, which was set up by the United States for its own benefits. They feel they are a voice of resistance. Pakistan had a direct contribution in providing safe havens for the Taliban, providing them with not only shelter but also training to carry out attacks in Afghanistan and elsewhere. Throughout these 2 decades of war, Taliban conducted various attacks in Afghanistan, one of which was on the Indian embassy in Kabul, which killed around 60 people. The US was aware of Pakistan's role, but it did not push Pakistan on it, as it needed Pakistan and its defense bases to support its operation in Afghanistan. With this started a long drawn out war and the process of rebuilding Afghanistan. The US presidents from Bush to Trump to Biden all had promised that USA would not get involved in the nation building, and yet it tried the same, though with a failed result. Since 2001, US has spent $2 trillion for the reconstruction, humanitarian aid programs, and on training the Afghan security forces. But this expensive nation building project went wrong from the start and grew worse as the war dragged on. Instead of bringing stability and peace, the United States unintentionally built a corrupt, dysfunctional Afghan government that remains dependent on the US military power for its survival. All this rebuilding came crashing down, literally and metaphorically, as the Taliban has now got complete control over Afghanistan. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next part as we continue on analyzing the terrible Afghan crisis.